Hey YouTube, this is Evan Magician 34, and I've got a new spin on agents for you. This is Counter-Fairy agents, so Counter Agent. And I'll go ahead and get right to it. This is a real fun deck. It kind of depends on the right hand sometimes, but it's definitely got a lot of power. 3 copies of Bountiful Artemis, obviously the heart and soul of any Counter-Fairy deck. And because we're running agents, as you can imagine, we are running Sanctuary in the Sky. And if you're going to do that, Meltiel, Sage of the Sky, becomes very powerful. Pretty much on par with Artemis, to tell the truth, just that he's dependent on a card for his effect to work. We're running 3 copies of the Agent of Mystery Earth. Great way to go find your Hyperion, of course. 1 copy of the Agent of Miracles Jupiter. He's just an alternative search target when you don't have Sanctuary, although you usually will. And if you have Sanctuary, you'll almost always want to be searching Master Hyperion. We're running 3, partially just so we can search him. 1 copy of Honest, needless to say. And we're running 2 copies of Vendalgion, the Dark Dragon Lord. Whenever you fire off a counter trap to negate something, this guy is just devastating to follow up with. Absolutely. He's often a game-turning play. And then we're running 2 copies of Zeratius, Herald of Heaven, and basically you almost always just use him just to pitch and search for the Sanctuary and pump up your Hyperion. And that's actually it for the monsters. We're running 3 copies of Sanctuary in the Sky, obviously. That's pretty straightforward. Monster Reborn, another obvious choice. Dark Hole. And then we really have a pretty fair draw engine in this deck. We're running 3 copies of Pot of Duality. Now that it's out as a promo, there's no reason you can't go ahead and get 3. This deck does very little special summoning, believe it or not. And it's more important just to get your setup and keep your counter traps coming. Maintaining your setup is much more important than rushing to kill your opponent. This is the kind of deck where you can take it slow. So 3 Pot of Duality doesn't hurt us. We're also running 3 copies of Cards from the Sky. Remove a fairy, draw 2 is basically how this works. You can't attack that turn, but once again, it's better to sit behind Artemis and some counter traps. Definitely want to try to overlap Cards from the Sky and Pot of Duality in the same turn. That works out really well. Everything else is traps, actually. 1 copy of Solemn Judgment, still probably the best counter trap overall. We're taking advantage of 3 copies of Divine Punishment. It's one of the reasons that these 2 themes overlap so beautifully. And in some ways, the fact that it negates monster effects rather than summons is actually better. So basically, we get to run 4 copies of Solemn Judgment, though, is what this says. And another very crucial counter trap, very defining for last format and this one, is Solemn Warning. We're definitely running 2 of that. Meltiel even helps you make up the life point loss. We're running 2 copies of Dark Bribe, just 2, but spells can be pretty damaging to us, especially Heavy Storm. So this is a pretty nice card to have around and backing us up, and it's nice to be able to stop other counter traps occasionally. We're also running 1 copy of Judgment of Anubis. This card's gotten some attention in this format. I don't know if it necessarily belongs in every deck, but it belongs here. You can pitch an extra card off, and basically what it does is it negates the effect of a spell that includes the effect of destroying a spell or a trap card on your side of the field. So if your opponent activates Heavy Storm or Mystical Space Typhoon, basically, you're going to flip this, negate it, and it will also give you the option to destroy one of your opponent's monsters and deal damage to them equal to its attack. So it just functions as a way to punish Heavy Storm, basically. So it allows you to set 3 back rows or something like that and be safe. And of course, Artemis helps pay for the cost as well. We're also running 3 copies of Negate Attack. It's just the counter trap Wabaku, more or less. It's a way to protect your weaker counter-fairy loving things like basically Meltiel and Artemis, and then profit from their effects at the same time while you're protecting them. And last, we're also running Return from the Different Dimension. We have plenty of ways to remove our stuff, and your opponent may help you by removing stuff. Because of Cards from the Sky and Hyperion, this is definitely a good inclusion for this deck. And that's the main deck already. The extra deck's pretty flexible. Your sinking options are somewhat limited, except for Monster Reborn, of course. I'm running Ally of Justice, Decisive Armor, basically just because 10 is one of the few numbers you can relatively reliably sink for, so it's nice to have a target. And Light is a fairly common attribute these days, and that guy can punish them quite heavily. Trishula, Dragon of the Ice Barrier, of course. Stardust Dragon. Red Dragon Archfiend. Scrap Dragon, a lot of these are just standard choices these days. Colossal Fighter. Thought Ruler Archfiend. Black Rose Dragon. A lot of these you're actually going to have to Monster Reborn to be able to sink for. Ancient Sacred Wyvern, this guy can be quite good, especially with the fact that you're probably not going to take too much damage. Bryanak, Dragon of the Ice Barrier. Gaianite, the Force of Earth. Flammable Orchesis, realistically this guy should probably be Orient Dragon, but I don't happen to have one right now. But if you don't either, that's no sweat. You can just run this guy or another Gaianite, and that works out too, but 6 is a number you can sink for. TG Hyper Librarian. Basically because he's just a big 5-star. Ally of Justice Cataster. Actually, instead of Librarian, believe it or not, it's actually not too bad of an idea to just go with Magical Android, just because it's light attribute, but One Honest obviously isn't very reliable for that, so Librarian may be better in the long run. Cataster. And number 39, Utopia. And you can easily pull out an extra card from this extra deck as well to use Steel Swarm Roach, if you'd like. I included Utopia just because he's light attribute, but that's certainly not mandatory or anything. So anyway, that's the deck, Counter Agents, and until next time, rate, comment, subscribe, and check out my channel for more cool videos.